Welcome to the confirmation work session, executive appointment confirmation hearing for Adam Trombley. And before we get started, we'll take a roll. Start over here with the youth employment and parks person. Just say your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Isabel Marshall.
Isabel.
Exalto.
Forrest Dunbar.
Cameron Perez-Radia.
Crystal Kennedy.
Austin Quinn Davidson.
Felix Rivera. Christopher Constant.
Adam Trombley.
Nikki Chewbacca.
On the phone.
Jamie Allard.
And then over in the corner, we have
Barbara Jones, municipal clerk. Jen Brister, administrative assistant.
Tom Kraft.
You can call him Steph White Government Watchdog.
and there's someone in the back.
Steph.
Oh, hi, Stephanie. Oh.
Hi there, welcome. Okay, the usual form is that we now hand the conversation over to the municipal manager. In her place, we have the HR director, Nikki Chewbacca. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to introduce Adam Trombley. Adam has been nominated by Mayor Bronson to serve as his Executive Director of Community Development. Adam is a 1998 graduate of East High. After attending college in the lower 48, he returned home in 2004 and became an entrepreneur. He launched a small business with his brother. After 3 years helping to manage and oversee the business, he took a position with the oil and gas industry as an account manager. In that capacity, he managed multi-million-dollar accounts for super major and independent oil and gas companies. His customers included ConocoPhillips, BP, and Hilcorp, among others. Adam also has served on various state and local boards and commissions. He was unanimously confirmed by the Alaska State Legislature to serve on the Board of Governors of the Alaska Bar Association. He was unanimously confirmed by the Alaska State Legislature to serve on the Board of Big Game Commercial Services. He was unanimously confirmed by the Anchorage Assembly to serve on the Anchorage Budget Advisory Commission, which he chaired. And he also was appointed to the board of the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce. Adam also previously served on this assembly representing East Anchorage. Adam has devoted a great deal of his time, energy, and expertise to improve the lives of the citizens of Anchorage. And he already has demonstrated his abilities as an effective change agent in the few short weeks that he's been with this administration. But I'll let him tell you more about that himself. So that is my privilege to introduce Adam to this assembly today and to commend him for confirmation as Mayor Bronson's Executive Director of Community Development.
I would just note for the record that Mr. Weddleton's arrived. Mr. Trombley, you have the floor.
Well, it's really good to see you guys again. I've met with most of you. I think there's only two I haven't yet, Mr. Perez-Radia and Ms. Austin Davidson. Just timing just hasn't allowed, but I've enjoyed meeting with all of you and listening to your concerns and comments about your district. Just give you a more detailed brief history of me. I am married. I have two daughters. My wife Stephanie is in the back. Again, I graduated from East High School in 1998. I received a Division I scholarship after high school to the Virginia Military Institute. Moved back in 2004, became an entrepreneur, started a business with my brother. I helped manage and oversee all aspects of the business for roughly 3 years when I took a job in the oil and gas industry. 13 years, I have managed multi-million-dollar accounts with both independent and super majors from the North Slope all the way to the Cook Inlet on the east and west side of the Cook Inlet. My focus was designing, implementing, and managing chemical injection systems as well as production chemicals. During that time, I've served on multiple boards, was appointed by then Mayor Sullivan to serve on the Budget Advisory Commission, serving 1 year as chair. I was appointed by Governor Parnell, reappointed by Governor Walker, confirmed by the legislature to the Board of Governors for the Bar Association from 2012 to 2018. I was also appointed to the Chamber of Commerce, served 1 year, and I also served on the Board of Aquila for 5 years, where I met Mr. Constant. I've had the pleasure of coaching high school basketball for the last 4 years, and this year we actually won a state title. In 2011, I was elected to the Assembly representing East Anchorage, serving 1 year as vice chair. During my time, I focused heavily on housing. I wrote the highly effective ordinance, which allowed for third-party review of building plans. That ordinance has created jobs and businesses in the Anchorage community. It sped up the building process for single family and duplex and is now the preferred way to receive plan review for residential construction. In the months that I've been in this position, we've made substantial changes to how the department functions. We've implemented new policies, substantial compliance, plan review times, and curb ramps. We've authorized the front counter to provide plan review for small projects such as bathroom remodels, which has sped up permitting. We're currently going through Title 21, Title 23, the DCM, Design Criteria Manual, and MASS for code changes, which I'll be presenting those in Mr. Weddleton's committee on Thursday. I've also initiated a goal of bringing GIS, code enforcement, and planning right-of-way development services to move to all digital documents so the public can search historical data on properties and not use staff time. We've already eliminated the permit clerks from having to file paper documents where electronic documents have already been entered. This has allowed for more time interfacing with the customers. And we're also moving towards electronic permitting, having weekly meetings to ensure its implementation, where we're working with IT to integrate Rhythm for Civics, Infor, ePlans, Evolve, and CityView. I'll end it there and listen to any questions you guys might have for me.
Ms. Salazar.
I have two questions. So they both go different directions. So the first is, can you talk a little bit about how you might advise the administration about long-term planning vision, particularly in our planning documents, land use plans, comprehensive plan, when it wants to bring forward solutions to short-term priorities. In particular, I'm talking about the TED development over at Tudor and Elmore. There's a lot of interest to utilize the area designated for the TED development to address homelessness and homelessness-related issues, but there's also been significant investment by the municipality in the TED development, including rezones and a lot of neighborhood push for that. So can you talk about how you might balance those interests or how you might advise the mayor about that?
Sure. So I don't really think that there has to be that much of a push. I mean, this mayor wants to develop. He wants to have responsible development. He wants all parts of town. And one of the things that you both said to me, that Midtown's not just a pass-through, that's actually a location to go to. I don't think that the mayor, when I go to him and say, hey, this is a good opportunity for development, that there's going to be a lot of pushback. The groundwork's already been laid through your efforts with the rezones, and there's broad community support for something like that. So I think the issue with that development is making sure that we find a good developer, a good responsible developer that's going to follow through on their commitment, unlike the last one. So the nice thing, again, the groundwork's been laid by your efforts. We just need to make sure that the people that are going to be doing that are responsible and will follow through.
Thank you. Mr. Pressworthy is in the queue, and then Mr. Weddleton.
Mr. Costa, I think she had.
Oh, yeah.
one more
Just pop me
question.
at the end.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I'll put you back in tonight. Go ahead.
Thanks. Well, welcome. I guess my question initially is, if you could just, I'm reading over your resume and I'm seeing that your past 3 positions are a project manager, a sales manager, and an account manager. I guess that's my question is, you're being appointed in an executive level position that's overseeing some huge departments and large budgets and many staff. Can you talk to us a little bit about your qualifications as it relates to sort of that level of a position? And I see that you were appointed to many boards and commissions, but I'm really interested in just your sort of your work experience and how that relates to this job.
Sure. So when you look at I think titles are confusing at times, right? So when you look at my position over the last 13 years, I work with executive level folks from Conoco, BP, Hillcore, Cook Inlet Energy to implement their strategies, to understand what it is that they want. And then I have to go back to my company and I have to work with higher levels to ensure that the structure of pricing is implemented. How do we manage inventory? How do we get product from point A to point B? How do we deal with the Union Pacific Railroad? How do we deal with the Whittier Tunnel? And how to, so there's a whole host of things that go in to managing chemical injection systems, getting chemicals from point A to point B, ensuring that the customer is happy, and it's not just as simple as just selling chemical or just managing the account. How do you, working with all facets of the company, from IT to for electronic chemical tank management. How do you deal with I'm sorry, I just blanked it. Like I said, chemical management, inventory, understanding the customer's needs and strategies and implementing that. So it's no different than what I'm going to be doing now. You have real estate, you have public works, you have development services. All those have broad needs All those have broad functions. And how do you tie all those things together? My history, 13 years in the oil industry, of working with multiple players at multiple levels, all the way down to the guy that turns the wrench, to the guy that makes the financial decision of who are we going to go with. Are we going to go with this company or that company, and selling those ideas to them? I have a broad base of support, broad base of experience of dealing with all aspects and all levels.
It's just one. I don't doubt any of the things you just said. The thing I'm curious about is I guess I'm curious about your leadership style and about what kind of sort of work environment the people who work for you, the many people who work for you can expect. So maybe you could share a little bit about how you lead people and what kind of a sort of environment folks are going to experience working for you.
Sure. So I've sat down and I've talked to all the directors that are going to be reporting to me, and even the ones that don't report to me. And I told them all, I don't micromanage. Let's face it, Lance Wilbur knows more than I do. I rely on him to help me. I believe in giving people the freedom to utilize their talent the best way that they see fit. If there's a conflict, then I'll step in. If you need resources, I'll step in and I'll help out. But I really do believe that human beings are phenomenally creative. And I think if you unleash that potential within them and saying, hey, I'm not going to micromanage you, do your job. As long as you get your job done, that's all I really care about. I think it's always been a very, well, at least in the past month, a very collaborative effort, very rely on other people's strengths and talents to really get the job done, and not have a heavy-handed, this is what we are doing, and there are no other ways other than what I want to do. I'm open to listen, to hear what people have to say, and ultimately make that decision.
Thank you, sir.
Right, Mr. Welton is next in the queue.
I have 4 at this point, so you can give it a vote if someone else wants in the queue. Couple things, what in your views, so looking at changes in Title 21 in particular, so what is the role of our many land use plans? Land use plan, the comprehensive plan, district plans, and so on. Do they control what happens in Title 21?
Well, I think that they do. When you look at the Anchorage 2040 plan, which I've read, that most of you probably voted on, I believe. I don't remember when it was voted on. But that provides a policy. The Assembly's provided a policy of saying we've identified the challenges moving forward, and they've actually provided strategies in there on how to address the challenges that are coming forward, whether it's the need for industrial land, commercial land, what it is for residential. We're expecting, based on the 2040 plan, an increase of anywhere from 27 to 41,000 people in Anchorage over the next 20 years. How do we manage that? How do we move to higher density housing in certain areas? How do we handle parking? So I think that those provide a phenomenal framework on how to move forward. And then it's our job now to implement those things so that we don't come up and when the time comes and those people are here, that we're not scrambling at that point. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, there's many details in that one.
Yeah, so one more and then we'll circle
Okay, that's
around.
fine. So that's the big one that's coming. So we have, I think you probably read the Bend and Adams report.
Yes.
Kind of analyze the department and so on. So I guess your feedback on, I think the department, Bob Dole and others have been working on points there where we are in that and how you continue that. And that ties in with your comment that we're moving towards e-permitting, which is one of the goals in there. Kind of thought we were there.
Right.
So how far are we from really being totally involved with e-permitting?
Sure. Well, in regards to the Bend and Adams report, one of the major components of the Bend and Adams report is having a single point of contact when it comes to permitting. The reorganization that we've worked on, that we've, at least on our end, that we've finalized in my department, is we've taken all permitting functions, whether it's watershed management, traffic, right of way, and we've put them all underneath Ron Thompson. So that if you have a permitting challenge, a permitting issue, there's one person that you have to go to. You're not bouncing around between departments. That was a major component of the Bend and Adams report. E-permitting, there's a very good system out there. It's called eVolve. It's used in other jurisdictions, most notably in North Carolina. That's been highly effective. We've looked at that, but the good news is that we're not looking at buying a brand new system, but it handles all of those electronic permitting. It will send it to each department, and the customer can go online and say, this is where my permit is, these are the comments, and it goes through that system. And you really don't ever have to go into the department. I don't think that we need to buy a new system. I think with what we're looking at right now is integrating all of the things that we do have so that you have one portal and that the customer can go in and do everything at one time. CityView doesn't necessarily talk to Infor. Infor doesn't necessarily talk to Rhythm Pacific. So, and I'm still getting spooled up on all that. So that's an IT function that we're going to be integrating, but we're not there 100%, but we will be.
All right, thanks. So we'll come back to you, and we'll come back to you, Ms. Salatil. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Adam, I apologize. When we spoke, I was struggling, and I'm still struggling with the new structure and who sort of reports to whom and what's in your portfolio exactly. You mentioned everything going to Ron, but then does Ron report to you, or does Ron report directly to the municipal manager or whomever?
Sure. So you'll have me. You'll have building services, which is Ron. Underneath building services, you're going to have planning. You're going to have the permitting function of traffic, the permitting functioning of watershed management, and development services. Then you're going to have Ron reports to me. I report to the mayor. Then you're going to have public works, Lance. You're going to have maintenance and operation, project management, and engineering. Lance reports to me. You have GIS with Tina. There's really nothing underneath her. And then she'll report to me. And then you'll have real estate services, and underneath that is Heritage Land Bank. Christina, she'll report to me. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So my question is about traffic in particular. So it sounds like both the permitting function and the sort of construction side, when we're trying to alter traffic patterns, both report to you. Is that fair to say?
Ultimately, yes. Although what we're doing is that anything that has to do with private development is going to stay underneath Ron. The rest, which is really about 0.02%, the rest of it of traffic is going to go back underneath public works.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, you're right. Lance is going to have that element of traffic underneath him.
Well then, so my question is, and so last night the Seafields Community Council passed a resolution regarding Apollo Drive, which I had CC'd you on some emails about, and East Anchorage in general, as you know from your time representing it, very dense and was built during a time when there weren't a lot of safety measures put in for pedestrians. And so traffic calming is a very big issue in my district. And we've had different administrations that have taken different approaches to it. Some have invested more money in traffic calming, some haven't. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on traffic calming and anything you might have to say about Vision Zero, and sort of what your philosophy will be when it comes to those kind of traffic issues.
Well, you'll have to spool me up on Vision Zero. I haven't heard of that yet. So that's a first to me, so I can't talk about that one. But as far as traffic calming goes, I think there's a whole host of things that you can do. I know the fire department is against speed bumps for a whole host of reasons. I think we should probably listen to them on that. That doesn't mean that they're the end all be all to it. But I think you can, you and I talked about having the flashing light of just saying, how fast are you going? Those are really good things just to remind people of how fast that they're going in the area. Other than that, I mean, you can't tear up Apollo Drive and change the way that it looks, right? So you're going to have to deal with it as it is. But going forward, I think that the community's done a very good job of new development, of making sure that we don't have the same traffic issues we do along Apollo Drive. So.
Well, can I ask a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair? So, well, two things I'll say. First, Vision Zero was sort of a lens through which the prior administration approached pedestrian safety. And the idea is you get to zero pedestrian deaths, which some other cities have done. We are nowhere near. I think we've had 3 pedestrian deaths already this year, and we're only halfway through the year. Anchorage, unfortunately, is a pretty deadly place to be a pedestrian or a cyclist. There are things like speed cushions rather than speed bumps, and we've been working with the fire department on that. I guess to put a finer point on it, we have been funding traffic calming projects with bond issues. And I'm wondering if you will be an advocate when people are discussing what should go in the bond, if you are an advocate for traffic calming.
Well, I think what you emailed me the other day about the child, that's heartbreaking, right? I mean, nobody wants to see that. And I think I'm also not into reinventing the wheel. So if there's other communities that have got to zero pedestrian deaths, I think that those are models to look at and models to look for. And so, yes, absolutely. I don't think anybody wants to see a kid get hit by a car. So whatever we can do to help prevent those sorts of things and be an advocate for that, without a doubt, you'd find nothing but support from me on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of quick questions, because I know we're running out of time. So first is, and this is sort of a follow-up to both what Mr. Weddleton and Mr. Dunbar asked. So as you know, the municipality has a variety of different plans and policies. You mentioned 2040. Mr. Dunbar mentioned Vision Zero. There's also a complete streets policy dealing with multimodal functions. There's the Climate Action Plan, which has a chapter on land use and transportation. So how are you, and what's your general philosophy on guiding both the mayor and the assembly on ensuring that we're meeting all of these various policy goals and objectives when there might be pressures, let's say from a developer that really wants to develop something, but it may not necessarily fit with something or comport with something in one of these various policies or plans?
Sure. Well, I think the most important thing is to recognize that not all those plans line up perfectly. There are a lot of contradictions within those plans. One plan may say this, another plan may say that. My strategy for housing, my strategy for ensuring that we meet the demands of the community is very market-based. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do. One of those things is property tax abatement. I've sat with all of you, and I think from an equity standpoint, I think it'd be really important to expand the ordinance you had 2019-12 to make it citywide. I love downtown. I love Mr. Constant. He's great. He has a great downtown, but I don't think something like that should just be limited to downtown. I think when it comes to parking requirements, I think we should leave that up to the market. Right now, parking is very expensive. We all talk about housing. We need housing, but yet in order to build a 4-plex, a 6-plex, an 8-plex, you need to assume a certain amount of parking for those locations. Can we assume if we're going to be building in certain parts of town that we can include street parking for that, so that we can we can use the higher density of the lot and not have those parking requirements to remove. We remove that, we can have more higher density housing in certain parts. The other thing that I would like to see is right now, I don't believe it's an ordinance that was being worked on, the reinvestment focus area ordinance for small area implementation plan. Right now, I think there's issues with that on how it allows development to happen. Right now, there's a limit on 5-acre lots. Well, we're in Anchorage. There's not a lot of 5-acre lots left. I think we should remove that and go down to about a 1-acre lot, so that there's a project off Northwood right now that would help that pencil out. It's higher density housing in an area that needs it. And so I think when it comes to housing, the market helps, but the market is a very good determiner of what people want and how to build. What I would hate to have happen is that a plan, and I give you a perfect example, Title 21, there are a lot of projects that do not pencil out. We do not have housing because there's 25-foot setbacks. The project simply does not pencil out. So we talk about housing, but yet we have code, we have plans that say, well, we need to do these things because we want it to look a very particular way, then we're not going to provide the housing for the people. Well, the plan is great, but it doesn't work in reality. So we need to be flexible, right? We need to be very flexible when it comes to code, to change code, to look at the policies, but also be flexible within the policy.
Really quick second question. So, and you can answer this one as I don't know yet, but are you planning any significant changes in the various departments that report to you / report to other people underneath you?
Yes, I think there's substantial, at least in the building services, I don't think there's anything negative, but the stuff that we're going to do to speed up plan, like a significant change for, give me more
specifically of like staffing changes.
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
Thanks.
No, there's no staffing changes.
So I have myself in the queue before we roll back around, and we have about 4 more minutes. So you're aware of the RBSA, the Roadmap for Vital and Safe Anchorage?
I'm sorry, say it again.
The roadmap for vital and safe acreage.
I have not read that, no.
Okay, it's not a plan per se, it's a group of people that are working together, including like AEDC,
Okay,
Downtown Partnership, including a broad array of stakeholders. And so we have funded their work. They are really the ones who, through the pandemic, sparked the conversation about now what are we gonna do? How are we gonna transform our city? And it doesn't just focus on the downtown, but it does focus on increasing investment, regulatory barriers, focus areas, et cetera. And so the question that I have is how will you implement that? But I think then the first question is, may I introduce you to the RVSA so you can begin a conversation with them?
yeah, I'd like, well, I can't really comment on how I would implement what they have, because I've never talked to them. So yes, I would like to talk to anybody that talks about revamping regulations so that we can get government out of the way. I'm happy to, well, I'll talk to anybody, to be honest with you.
So we'll come back to that question. Now we'll roll back up to Ms. Zalatel.
Yes, thank you. So you'd mentioned ordinance you'd helped pass when you remember, and it's somewhat being, it created jobs for permitting. And I believe one of those companies, it was run by Ron Thompson for a while. And he is now the single point of contact for permitting. What safeguards or assurances have you put in place to ensure that any work he did in the private sector there's no conflict of interest or appearance of conflict of interest? It's my understanding that his business was sold to a family member of his. So can you talk a little bit about how that workflow is going to go? Because I know that I've heard some concerns that there could be conflicts if he is now potentially approving or the point of contact for permits for jobs that he had started in the private sector.
Sure. Well, I know that Ron has done all the legal steps necessary to remove himself from the business. Anything that comes forward, and he's talked to me about a couple projects. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he says, I'm not involved in this one. I think our ethics laws are very, very strong. And if there ever is a question, I have no doubt that Ron would go to the Board of Ethics. So the safeguards that I've put in, I haven't necessarily put in any safeguards because I think our ethics laws are very strong. And I think the folks that work for me have very high ethics, and that they would conflict themselves out if that were the issue. And Ron's already indicated to me on several things where he has conflicted himself out from decision-making.
Okay, who's the point of contact then on those permits?
That would be Bob Dole, or it would be myself.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Dunbar, final question. Oh, no, I think. And then Mr. Rivera. Yeah, have another one. Okay, anyone else? Mr. Walton, oh, it was you, that's right, you had 6.
Seven now.
7.
One thing you said, where was fire or charge? Was it under law as well?
No, it's not. Fire plan review has stayed underneath fire. I think there's labor issues with having them come up underneath me. Plus, and I don't mean this in the negative sense at all, but I just don't know how else to put it. I think there's territorial components there that they're fire and they want to stay underneath the fire department. And I'm fine with that. In fact, they've been in all of our discussions as well, as far as speeding up permitting process. And they actually gave us 4 or 5 recommendations that we're going to be implementing. I don't have those off the top of my head to help, because they come to the counter and stuff that they can do as well to help speed along the process. And Brian Dean's been great as far as wanting the same things that we do too.
Okay, good. So when we had approved the TED project out there, and it looked pretty good, it looked ambitious, but when it failed, we found out we were on the hook essentially for $1 million or so. Don't do that to us again.
Well, don't do that to us.
I think it's very important that we're
But not
responsible
you
with.
again, broadly speaking.
No, absolutely, absolutely. We need to be careful of the money we spend because it's not ours.
Okay, this matter will be before us Tuesday night, and look forward to seeing where the work goes.
All right, thank you guys.
Return.
Was it?
That's right.